Foundation first.
Short race, yes, they're here.
Jessica Linthorn and Greg Nickel and Brenda O'Neill. Good morning.
Morning, thank you. So we are here today, and thank you, Mr. Warden, for having us in to speak about the 10th Annual Bayshore Race, which is an event that happens in the city of Owen Sound. And we have a few other partners as well, so I'd like to just share a few minutes with you. So quick introductions, my name is Jessica Linthorn, and I'm a race co-director with the Bayshore Race. I've been involved for a number of years now. And joined with me is Greg Nickel, race co-director, and Brenda O'Neill, events manager with the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation. So a little bit about our event. This year, coming up Sunday, August 25th in Owen Sound. It is an out and back race. So we've got a beautiful photo here where we are utilizing the rail trail. So we do want to give, just right off the hop, a shout out to the Grey County staff that have helped us. So I do want to say thank you specifically to Victoria, Mandy, Scott, and Stephanie for their help with us to move this event forward. It is a 10th annual event this year, and since the beginning, we have raised now $325,000 for the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation. So what are we raising money for? Exactly that, the Hospital Foundation, to support our community. And this year specifically, the money that we are raising is for the priority projects set out by Grey Bruce Health Services. So here's an image of our map. Hopefully that appears okay for you. We do offer a 5, 10K, and then a half marathon route, which is 21.2, if you feel like going for a long run. And you can run or walk this event, this course. We do have a kids 1K fun run, which is always very well received. It's great to see the kids coming out and being active. There are a few details for this success, and that's really what we're here today to say thank you again for. So we do have 2 road closures. We have 1 OPP patrol, and that's on the east side of Rockford. There's a water station there. You can see that's where the OPP do help us out. And it takes over 60 volunteers to ensure that our course is safe and well received for our runners and our walkers. So there's a picture of Mayor Body. So what does this mean for our local economy? So on average, we see about 454 participants each year, and 40% of those participants are coming from outside of Owen Sound. We've seen participants from 3 countries, 4 states, and 4 provinces. It's fun to go through and look at that data and pull some of those postal codes and see how far people are coming. And they may be in town for another event, they may be staying with friends and family, but certainly there is an economic spin-off from this event. People are staying local accommodators, they're in our local restaurants, and certainly shopping, getting gas in our community and spending money. So in the last 10 years, we have seen close to 2,000 visitors from outside of the area coming in. They're participating in our event, they're exploring Grey County. Again, they're shopping, dining, and experiencing our community. So that's what we want. We do see lots of positive conversation on social media about how beautiful the course was, how they took the opportunity to go down to the waterfront. Maybe they've driven east to check out a cidery, just as an example. That sounds like something a runner would be into. And again, we have raised over $325,000. So we're really proud of this event. We're really proud of the runners and participants that come out. And we're really proud to be involved and to provide the support to the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation. So I'll wrap up a couple more slides. I won't take too much time. But we are asking you to get involved, to consider being involved. Everybody could be involved in one way or the other. If you want to participate in the race, great. I mentioned the courses. Again, you can sign up at bayshoreRace.com. You can volunteer. Mayor Body was out. Councillor Body came out last year at 7 a.m. I think he might have been there at 6:30 a.m. To help us with the registration table.
I didn't have to be there till 7.
I think I may have told you 6. So it's 6 this year. So, or if you're unable to attend, if you're unable to help us out, there is opportunity to pledge a racer. So if you hop online and check out and find somebody you know or you don't know, and you can pledge them to attend. Or you can look at sponsoring the event too. So we are asking that people learn about our event, be engaged, learn about the good things we're up to, and you can visit bayshoreRace.com for more information or if you want to register. So again, shouting out to Grey County staff certainly, but of course to County Council as well. Thank you. So with County of Grey, we're working toward and receiving approval and facilitation of our road closures and the permission to access the trail. Last year, the trail was in beautiful condition. Grey County staff had gone out to ensure that it was ready for us. We've had wonderful customer service. So again, shout out to those staff. We really, really appreciate the service we've received. The municipality of Meaford helps us out with some equipment drop-off. Our turnaround point is in the municipality of Meaford, so although we don't need closures and other details with them, we certainly appreciate the work staff coming out to drop off some barricades. And then again, shout out to the City of Owen Sound too for approval and facilitation of our road closures. It's very important. So with that, I'll look to my team to see if we have any additional notes, but I'll leave it at that, and we will see you at the race. And again, you can register online at bayshorerace.com.
Thanks, Jessica. Just want to thank you guys for letting us come and speak to you today. We're really excited to partner. I'm really excited to partner with the two ladies behind me, Jess and Brenda, and Amy McKinnon at the Hospital Foundation to bring you guys what is a really good event for our community. I want to thank the City of Owen Sound for some of the infrastructure improvements that they've done to allow us to use such a great trail, and it really lets us have a great event supporting the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation. It's a healthy event. It's an event that people set their goals to be at, and through that goal setting, the Hospital Foundation benefits of running a 5K as fast as they can, or a 10K as fast as they can, or a half marathon. And a lot of kids get involved and join in as well. And I mean, we have great support from city staff when we do our road closures, from my perspective on kind of the operationals of the event. And again, I want to thank County Council, Grace Hubble Conservation guys for what they do for the trail to get it ready in late August and allowing us the use of. So again, thank you on behalf of the Hospital Foundation and Jessica and I.
Thank you very much for the visit. I read an article just yesterday that said sitting is the new smoking, right, Dr. Era? Yeah. So events like this are just wonderful to get people off their butts and to raise money for a worthwhile hospital as well. Thank you. Questions? Sorry, were there questions from anyone? I didn't see any. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're going to jump to item 4, correct?
Yes.
Because we're waiting on the other delegation. Yes. So looking at the consent agenda, do we have any items that need to be pulled? Councillor Soever?
Items D and E, please.
D and E. Let me make a note. Okay. And I guess I need to get a mover, do I, to approve the rest? Moved by Councillor Mackey, seconded by Councillor Burley. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, we're moving on to item 6A. The Grey Highlands, excuse me, I'm still reading 5, my apologies. 6A, that's a community improvement plan. Randy and Savannah, or is it just Randy? Both, okay. I'll get a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Come on forward.
Good morning. Very excited to be here and talk to you about this program this morning. And that was an excellent presentation by the students. I'm so excited for our future here in Grey. Wow. And hopefully this is going to make a major impact in our future in Grey County as well. So Randy and I are going to split this up a little bit to talk about the background and kind of how we got here, and then you all have a copy of the CIP draft in front of you. It's a really long document, so we didn't want you to have to be flipping through on the laptop or computer. So this program, it really began in 2017 when we got our Economic Development Working Group together, which has representation from every one of our member municipalities, and they came together and said we really need a tool to prioritize and spur investment. So that's where this came from, because a community improvement plan is a tool that we can use to spur that investment. So consultations with that working group began in 2018, and this has been an 18-month process of consultations and edits and reviews of this report to get it to the state that it is in now for you. So a community improvement plan is developed by municipal planners and economic developers working collaboratively to develop policies and incentives targeting specific types of growth and investment. So our local municipalities together identified a need for this plan to help promote and enable the prioritized development across the county as outlined in the new official plan. And what we really wanted to do with this, and the reason why it's a template, is because Grey County as a county cannot do a CIP at this level. But by doing a template, you have more ability at the local level through a local CIP to be able to make change and make this type of momentum happen. So that's the reason why this is a template and not a Grey County CIP, but something that each of our member municipalities will work together on. And it also provides a blanket across the entire county, where typically you might have a couple blocks in each municipality that would be eligible for a CIP. This removes that so that every inch of Grey County is covered. Our hope is to develop an inventory of investment-ready properties and to realize its economic development vision of being open for business, while still ensuring Grey County Council's goal of growing the Grey County economy, which is the goal that economic development and planning are working under. It's meant to enable and boost development momentum across the region, because we know things are going very well, but there are still priority developments that we need to see happen, and this would allow for that. The intent is to offer the targeted incentives county-wide through the adoption of local municipal CIPs. So this is kind of step one to get us to that point. And I should say that last August, after we had gone through all of those consultations, we pulled together our economic development officers, our CAOs, our planning staff to have a sit down and look through the original draft. And a lot of changes happened after that point. And then I know Kevin and all of the treasurers from around the counties also met to make sure that we could discuss and see what this would look like moving forward. So here are some of the incentives that we're looking at. It's an a la carte menu, something you can pick and choose from. So what is in this draft does not mean that every single municipality is going to have the same CIP. It's really truly based on your local priorities. So that's why this document is so large, because that way you can pull from it what it is that you are most interested in. But what are our priorities here? Increasing the attainable housing stock. It's something that we hear about all the time. We know that you are dealing with it every day. So that is absolutely priority one, which includes secondary suites, multi-unit housing, purpose-built rental housing, rooming house developments, and apartment dormitory style developments. Increasing value-added agricultural uses, so agritourism and facility improvements on agricultural land. Promotion and development, or the redevelopment and conversion of brownfield, vacant, and grayfield properties. And we know that there are properties right across the county that are absolutely ready for this type of incentive. Supporting downtown revitalization for storefronts, publicly used frontages, and streetscapes, which is your typical downtown improvement type of project or facade improvement. And then the support of adaptive reuse of commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings. So if you have a building in your area that maybe isn't the value of what it should be, this would allow for those conversions to see something change that value. Because at the end of the day, a CIP is really about enhancing your assessment. That is, at the end of the day, what our goal is, to increase assessment right across the county. So the local municipalities would develop the CIP using this template and choose from the incentives that best support our priority areas as well as your priority areas. And then we will work. We're not going to leave you on your own to do this. We are here with you all the way through. So our staff will work with local municipalities on implementing the CIP program. Further consultation will need to occur as part of that process, which we will be with you on. And it is really, truly a local approval process. We aren't asking you to come back to us and approve these projects. Once you have your CIP, that's what we're looking for. You will approve it at the local level so that you do not have to come back and forth to Grey County. But we will ask that at the end of each year, we have a report card so that we can come back to this table and tell you exactly how things have been going and what development has spurred and what that has meant for the return on your investment. So Randy's going to take you through the CIP process in a little bit more detail about each of these different incentives and then the recommendations.
Thank you, Savannah, and good morning, County Council. As Savannah indicated, this has been a process over a few months, and we're excited to be here. We think that this is, as Savannah indicated, to be able to offer incentives to target specific types of development in those 5 key priority areas that Savannah highlighted. So we provided a hard copy of the CIP program template to you, as Savannah mentioned. It's a big document, so we're not going to go through it in great detail, but we're just going to provide an overview of some of the key sections of that document. So the first section of the document provides an overview of what community improvement plans are all about. It also provides an overview of the legislation and policies relevant to preparing a CIP for each local municipality. The second section outlines those 5 priority areas that Savannah mentioned, followed by eligibility criteria and procedures, as well as details about those specific menu of incentives or those options that are available to local municipalities in order to support those 5 priority areas. The third section identifies the process for monitoring and evaluating the success of the CIP program, as well as details about how to administer the CIP program. So this is, again, providing further detail and resources for local municipalities to be able to utilize this document to be able to implement it in as easy a way as possible at each local municipal level. We've also included several appendices which provides links to other source materials, general terms of incentive programs, bylaw templates, and evaluation criteria. So again, we're trying to make it as easy as possible by providing these templates. Basically, and for most sections, you just need to insert your municipal name and go through the process. And as Savannah mentioned, we're more than happy to help get to those next steps and to work with your staff to get to to the point where we're adopting these local CIPs at your local municipal level. So in terms of the incentives, so we've provided an overview of these incentives in a previous report, so I'm not going to go through those in detail, but wanted to indicate that these incentives are what can be considered. It's important for each local municipality to select what options work best to support the immediate needs of each of your local municipalities and the county, with emphasis on the incentives that would give us, quote, the best bang for our buck for meeting those 5 priority areas. One being the affordable and attainable housing piece, which, as Savannah mentioned, is one of our key priority areas that we've identified. It should be noted that Grey Highlands has already utilized a draft of the CIP program template to create a new Grey Highlands CIP, and they adopted that in April of this year. And this aligns with the CIP program that we're presenting here today. Grey Highlands did an excellent job on their CIP and proved that hopefully the CIP program template works. And it's something that can be implemented fairly easily at your local municipal level. In fact, we've actually incorporated some of their sections in their CIP into this final version of the CIP program template. In terms of next steps, should council support the CIP program template today, it's recommended that each local municipality would then seek input from your key stakeholders at each of your local municipalities. So these would include your local developers, downtown improvement areas, chambers of commerce, for example. And this would all, of course, be prior to adopting your CIP. Once a local draft CIP has been completed, a public meeting is required under the Planning Act to obtain any further feedback on the CIP prior to it being adopted by municipal council. The draft CIP also needs to be provided to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And again, we're willing to work with your local staff in terms of going through these steps in order to address all the requirements of the Planning Act. Each municipality is in a different position in terms of your starting point, so to speak. Some municipalities will require a local official plan amendment in concert with the CIP. Those can be done in parallel at the same time. You can actually have the public meeting as one public meeting for both your local official plan amendment and your CIP document. Again, we can assist staff through that process. And others will just require amendments to their existing CIPs. So some already have existing community improvement plans, and if the municipality is interested in offering up some of these incentives, it's just a matter of amending your current community improvement plan. Again, we can assist with that. In terms of financial and resource implications, so the approved 10-year capital plan identifies that the county would contribute $20,000 per municipality for a period of 5 years, starting this year to 2024. And the 2019 approved budget includes $20,000 for each local municipality as the county's contribution for some of those grant incentives. So these are things like the study and design grants, the startup space grants, the facade improvement grants, things like that, where that money can actually go towards for those improvements. In addition to the cash contribution, it's recommended that the county would also participate in the county tax portion of tax increment grants, such as the Brownfield Tax Assistant Grant or the Tax Increment Equivalent Grant. And those grants are detailed further in the template. It's also recommended that we provide relief to planning application fees and development charges as determined by the CIP program and subject to the county development charges bylaw being updated. Surplus land would also be considered, and again, that would be as determined by the CIP program and subject to the sale and acquisition land policy. For those municipalities that are not prepared to use the $20,000 in 2019, these funds can be held in reserve, which then can be utilized to support incentives in 2020. It's difficult to say at this stage what the overall financial implications will be for the other incentives, and this will all depend on the uptake of the incentives. For the county to participate in tax incentives, what's required is that council would need to pass a motion to support a bylaw that's adopted at the local municipal level in order for the county tax portion to be exempted for developments that qualify. So that's something that we would be receiving here at council, and council would have to pass those motions or those bylaws. For developments that qualify for application fee reduction exemptions, this could result in less application revenue being collected in the future. County staff, as Savannah mentioned, will work with local municipalities on monitoring and tracking the various incentives, and will report back on an annual basis to council through a Grey County report card. We will then monitor this over time and use this information to help inform future budgets. So at this stage, we're just recommending that the CIP program template be supported and that financial support be provided to local municipalities to assist with these various incentives, which includes the grant funding of up to $20,000 per year, subject to future budget approvals, as well as other incentives, including participating in tax incentives, providing surplus land, and reducing or waiving application fees and development charges. And that's our recommendation at this stage, and we'd be happy to take any questions from council.
And Savannah, questions, council? Councillor Soever?
I'd like to thank county staff for doing such a good job on putting this program together. The one thing I find a little confusing is this $20,000 grant. So basically, that's coming out of the county budget. So in effect, all of the lower tiers contribute to the county budget. So we're giving money to county and then we're getting it back. So
Essentially, yes, yeah, in that particular grant.
yeah, so I don't know why we're doing that, as these are special. Once the plan is in place and with the support of the county, the projects will be in the individual municipalities. So they're kind of like special area services. So what doesn't seem to make sense to me to, send money and then get it back. It just creates more paperwork. And, I think the responsibility for the funding should rest with the lower tier where the project is being undertaken. Now, the other supports, and of course there will be some impact on the county budget on deferral of development charges and lands and things like that. So that seems reasonable, because it would be an accounting nightmare to figure that out. But this cash just moving back and forth doesn't seem to make sense to me.
It's a fair comment, and it's something that I think we can, the $20,000 is in this year's budget, so that's already approved. But it's a good discussion we may want to have at the time of next year's budget in terms of how we handle the logistics in terms of the funding for specific dollar grants funds going forward.
Others? Do any other people have thoughts about Councillor Soever's comments? No, they don't. All right. I will call the question in. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's back to you. Okay. No problem. Sarah, I see you stepping up to the podium, but I'm going to suggest that we take a short break. We've only been sitting an hour or so, but I'm going to suggest a very short break. Say 2-3 minutes. Excuse me, we're on item 6B, the Recreational Trails Master Plan, a draft in any case. Sarah's approaching, and I need a mover, please, to put the item on the table. Moved by Councillor Woodbury, seconded by Councillor Bartnicki. Sarah,
Morning, everyone.
good morning.
So I'm going to give an overview because this plan was initiated in 2016 when most of you were not here. So I just want to give a little bit of a background. As I said, the plan was initiated in 2016, and this came as a result of a large number of individual requests from user groups for either uses expanding within the county forests or on the CP Rail Trail. And as a result, staff were directed to create a comprehensive document that would provide a comprehensive approach to deal with all of these types of requests. And in addition to this, deal with certain things like trail maintenance, signage, trail etiquette, those sorts of things that go along with managing the forest and trail properties. But unfortunately, the project did have a few hiccups, and there was some delays. There was some staffing changes here at the county. I went on a maternity leave, and the consulting company had some changes as well. So back in late 2018, staff took the project back on with the assistance of Grace Sobel, and we have now finished a draft, and this is what is being presented here today. So with regards to consultation, we did do some extensive consultation. We reached out to the user groups that we knew, and we put out basically to anybody that could come, and staff as well as the consultant met with these groups back in October of 2017. We had lots of discussions with regards to how they use the trail, how they wanted to use the trail, any concerns that they had, and those sorts of things, and any kind of future ideas that they would want with those. As well, there was a workshop that was held in November of 2017. Same sort of questions were asked and information was obtained, just in a workshop format. So the next steps and what we're hoping to accomplish today is to make the draft available for public review. We want to bring forward what we've done to date, bring it back to all those groups and individuals that have expressed interest, have a review period from now until mid to late summer. In the middle of that process, we want to have another public forum, a public meeting, and get some feedback that way, make sure that we've hit all the nails on the head and done everything that we set out to accomplish in the beginning. If any of those groups want to meet with us one-on-one, we are going to be open to that as well. And then the plan is to have a final version completed and presented to committee in the fall of 2019. And then hopefully it's approved and we can implement it after the fact. So the recommendation today is to receive the draft master plan and then make it available for public review.
Very good, thank you. Questions? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Sarah. Item 6C, that's you again, right, Sarah?
That's me.
Bothwell minor exemption application. I'll look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor, not Keaveney, it is Carlton, thank you. I was confused the two. And seconded by Councillor Burley.
All right. So we have before us an application for a minor exemption. This is to, minor exemption for our forestry management bylaw to clear property. The applicant has already started some of the work, but what his plan is to clear some invasive species and as well as to get rid of some ash that has been, there's evidence of emerald ash borer with these trees, so he wants to get rid of the diseased trees. Property itself is located just east of the soccer complex in Owen Sound. I don't know if this map is very good, but this is the rail trail right here, and here is the soccer complex. It's fronting onto 26th Street East. You can see that the application is for most of the property, but there is a small spot back here that is proposed to be retained as a woodlot and managed with good forestry management practices. So as part of this process, we have circulated to the neighbors, the Conservation Authority, the City of Owen Sound, as well as staff and our bylaw enforcement officer. We did not have any comments from neighbors. Gray Sauble noted that part of the property fell within the regulated area, and they were interested in, if there was any, proposed grading, that they would be wanting a permit from them. The city didn't have any concerns except with regards to the disposal of the ash trees, and they just requested that good forestry management practices be used when disposing of those trees. And as well, the bylaw enforcement officer did not have any concerns with the trees that were already removed and the ones that were proposed to be removed. And his recommendation was to plant a double windrow of trees on the western boundary between the soccer complex and the subject lands. So staff are recommending that this application be approved with obviously the condition that the double windrow of trees be planted on the western boundary, any permits that are necessary be obtained from Gray Sauble, and that the diseased trees are disposed of properly.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Mill?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. On the second page of the report, Sarah, it says down on the page, Mr. Godden also noted that while on site and walking throughout the property, no species at risk were observed or found. I'm heartened to see that perhaps there's going to be an element of common sense brought to the whole planning, and if that's all that's required, I'll hire a forester every day of the week to walk properties instead of having to do all the other stuff. So, thank you very much.
On that note, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Sarah. Scott, I think you're up next. Item 6D. Blue Vista, Town of Blue Mountains. I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Keaveney, and Councillor Klumpus is seconded. Scott?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up the presentation here. So now that my colleagues have done the heavy lifting of the CIP and the Recreational Trails Master Plan, I'm going to share with you some news about a proposed development in the Town of Blue Mountains. So this proposed subdivision is known as Blue Vista. It's located on the west side of Grey Road 21. So the property you see highlighted in red there on the map, it's directly north of the spa. Across Grey Road 21, of course, we have Collingwood and the County of Simcoe. To the west, we have what looks like a wooded area, and at the time when this photo was taken, it was a wooded area. That's actually the Second Nature development, which is currently under construction. And so one of the things you'll see on the next slide here is that this development is going to have connections directly on to Grey Road 21, but what the next slide doesn't show you is it will also have a connection through the Second Nature development, which will take you across to Grey Road 19 as well. The subject lands are about 21 hectares in size. This is the proposed subdivision at this stage, and when I say proposed at this stage, it hasn't been through any detailed agency review or public comments yet. So of course, as with any of our subdivisions at this level, it's still very much subject to change. Town staff have been actively reviewing and providing their comments back to the developer, and the county is doing the same, both from the planning department and the transportation department. They are looking at 133 lots at this stage, but it would be to accommodate up to 180 dwellings. And those dwellings at this stage are proposed to be a mix of single detached dwellings and semi-detached dwellings. And of course, on the east side there, you see the connection to Grey Road 21. They would be looking at servicing these developments through municipal water and sewer services. The lands are in a settlement area designation in both the county and town official plans. The recreational resort area in the county plan and recreational residential area in the town's plan. This same developer has also provided submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to the town, which is being circulated and processed simultaneous to this application. As I said, we've yet to receive detailed feedback, but the applications are out in circulation, so we do expect comments soon. And once we've had a chance to digest some of the comments and sit down with the developer, the town will look at scheduling a public meeting to get further comments on this. Once all that's taken place, this will of course come back to this table for a final recommendation. As such, at this stage, the recommendation is simply to receive the report for information, but I'd certainly be happy to take any questions, or if anyone has any early feedback on this development proposal that you'd like staff to consider, now's the time to hear it for sure as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Questions? Oh, Councillor Soever.
Yes, on this development, this is one of many occurring in that area. There's about 70% of our development is projected to be in that area. And a common issue that should be an issue of focus is drainage. And I note, looking at the various studies here, that the groundwater at the time of the studies in the test pits was very close to surface as expected. And in the drill logs and the pits, they describe a gray clay at the bottom, which sounds like actually bedrock. So very close to here, there are major drainage problems, and I think drainage is an important issue here. And since we don't yet in the town of Blue Mountains have a town-wide drainage plan, how this affects the other developments, and particularly the long-term residents in Craigleith, is a particular issue of concern.
Thank you very much for those detailed comments. We'll try to take some of these down, and certainly we'll chat further with town staff on that, but I appreciate your detailed comments there.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
6E, I believe, Randy, you're up next. Dealing with Flato, Southgate. I'm looking for a mover, please. Councillor Woodbury, Councillor Milne. Randy?
Great. Thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is to consider proposed red line revisions to a draft approved subdivision known as Flato East, which is located in the township of Southgate in the former village of Dundalk. So subject lands are up there on the screen, and they are located southwest of Highway 10. The current draft approved subdivision consists of a total of 500 residential units, consisting of 310 single detached units and 190 townhouse units on approximately just over 40 hectares of land. This is one of several subdivisions and developments that are being proposed by the same developer, Flato Group, in terms of in this area. So just to the west of it, we have Flato West that's been final approved. It's been primarily built. Flato North is to the north of Flato East, and it also has approximately 250 residential units. And as I noted, this current proposed draft approved development for Flato East is 500 units. There's been a combination of lots final approved already in both Flato North and Flato East. So the proposed revised plan and supporting documents were circulated to the township and various agencies for comment. The revised plan and documents were also posted on the county website. So this is just an image to show you what is being proposed with respect to the red line revisions. And what essentially they're proposing is to add additional road frontage to a stormwater management block. And that is located, if I can get this right here. Oops, go back. Anyways, it's located in the bottom corner of the map, And you can see where the red lines are located. There's a shifting of then lots, the lot lines by, in some cases, a meter or less, to accommodate that additional road frontage on the stormwater management block. And the reason for that is they need, at one point they needed to construct a retaining wall. By increasing the road frontage on the stormwater management block, they can use just conventional grading and won't require a retaining wall, which, again, if a retaining wall is required, then that's usually maintenance required for this, the township. And so this is will be an easier and cheaper way to maintain that stormwater management block. The increase in stormwater management block is being accommodated, but like I said, by reducing width of lots from lots 63 to 77 by a meter or less. The applicant is also proposing to shift what's known as Wright Street by 2 meters to the west in order to provide additional 1 meter lot depth to lots east of Wright Street and lots on the west side of Wright Street by increasing by 2 meters. So that's, you can see just north of the stormwater management block, there's a shifting of lots. All the same number of lots is being kept, so it's still the 500 total lots. It's just a matter of shifting some lot lines and block lines in order to accommodate some of these proposed changes. Grand River Conservation Authority, Grey County Transportation Services, and the Ministry of Environment Conservation Parks, they have no concerns with the proposed revisions. Township of Southgate staff have indicated they have no concerns as the proposed revisions are minor in nature, and the revisions can be addressed through the subdivision agreement process. So what's being recommended is that these red line revisions be draft approved. Following, if committee were to draft approve that, we'll be sending a notice of decision. And yeah, be happy to take any questions from committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I see none. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Andy. Turning next to item 6F. Cobble Beach in Georgian Bluffs. I'm looking for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Carlton, seconded by Councillor Burley.
Excellent. Thank you again. So the purpose of this is similar to the last report, is to consider some red line revisions to, in this case, a development known as Cobble Beach, just north of City of Owen Sound in the township of Georgian Bluffs. The subject lands are located east of Grey Road 1, north of Cobble Beach Drive, and are adjacent to Georgian Bay. For those that have not been to Cobble Beach, the clubhouse and restaurant is located just in the top corner of the image on the screen there. Top north right corner. The current draft approved plan consists primarily of residential, parkland, and open spaces. Open space uses to a maximum of 312 residential units. And this is excluding the mixed use and multiple residential blocks that will also be developed going forward. The applicant is requesting revisions. Essentially what they're requesting is there's blocks that have been identified for single attached units. And what they're proposing is to actually identify those single attached units within those blocks based on what they are now proposing to develop within those lands. They're also recommending to extend Street D northwards to connect to Street G. And this is an improvement over the road pattern, because this would eliminate a cul-de-sac at the end of Street G, which again will help from a maintenance perspective in terms of maintaining those roads. Individual residential lots are proposed to replace those blocks, as I mentioned. A total of 65 residential lots are proposed within those blocks, which is within the current draft approved range for the proposed development. The total count of residential units to the overall development would change from a range of 233 to 312 to 244 to 300 residential units, which again is within the range that has been draft approved to date. The applicant has submitted a number of studies in order to support the proposed revisions, and those have been reviewed by staff and agencies. A public meeting was held on April 10th, 2019 in the township. There were no written or verbal comments received by the public. In terms of agency comments, Grey Sauble Conservation Authority indicates that they have no objections to the proposed revisions. They note that a permit is required from their office for any development within the regulated area. We also received comments from Historic Saugeen Métis, the Source Water Protection Risk Management Office, and Grey County Transportation Services, and they indicate they have no concerns with the proposed revisions. Canada Post notes that the development will be serviced by centralized mail delivery provided through community mailboxes. And with respect to the Township of Georgian Bluffs, they passed a motion on May 8th of 2019 supporting the proposed red line revisions. So staff are recommending that the red line revisions be draft approved, subject to the revised conditions that are included in the attached report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions? I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And 6G. Looking for Anne Marie. Is Aaron going to?
Email, but
Okay, this is the Grey County Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan. I'm looking for a move. You'll move it, Councillor Burley, seconded by Councillor Mackey.
Thank you.
You're on.
As you're all aware, each municipality, county is regulated to have an energy conservation and demand management plan. The plan, as part of the plan, we have to report on our energy consumption annually and put it on our website. And every 5 years, we also have to report to council and develop and redevelop a plan. So the report in front of you deals a little bit, it just talks a little bit about what we have done over the past 5 years when it comes to conservation, mainly looking at a lot of the energy efficiency changes we have done in our buildings when it comes to capital projects. We were able to save, looks like, had a 5.1 reduction in our electrical usage in our buildings and an 11.87 reduction in natural gas usage. And a lot of that just has to do with updating to newer energy efficient equipment such as water heaters. Our LED lights have really had a significant impact too in our buildings in that savings. So looking forward, our estimate is we're hoping to have a 10% overall reduction over the next 5 years, so 2% a year. And in front of you, I have a plan. I apologize, in your report, if you had clicked on the link, this would have come up, but it didn't get printed out into the report, so I apologize. But it is attached to your report if you click on it. So the recommendations that we have are basically looking at a number of areas. We want to make sure that we have the technical aspects in which we're continuing on with the LED programs and the lighting and our capital projects. We want to make sure that there's some policy implementations that we're looking at within, making sure that anything that we're putting out, we're looking at energy efficiency wherever we can. And then, of course, we want to have that behavioral aspect to it too, where we're getting staff on board as to, you know, some things like maybe even turning their computers off at night, that sort of behavioral changes. So just to highlight, I'm not going to go through the entire implementation plan, but it does have some projected costs, some timelines, and what our measure of success is going to be, and some of the objectives and actions. So if I wanted to just highlight a couple of them, one of the things we're looking at doing is investing in energy software. Aaron did take the training for the RET Screen software, and which is a free software that's offered by the federal government, but there is one that's called a RET Screen Expert, and that one allows you to run reports for buildings and whatnot. So I believe it's about $1,000 for the purchase of that. So that's one we do have a free subscription right now for a year, so we're going to try it out. There are other ones out there, but we certainly will be actively looking at some sort of software that will help us provide a little bit more detailed information when it comes to reporting on buildings and what their usage is. It also, the software is great too, because then you could put projected savings in there too. If we do this to the building, how much might it save us? What we're doing is a little bit rudimentary, I guess, in the fact that we're just looking at usage in itself, whereas the software will also take into consideration the weather and other things that have an impact on how much energy you're using. Also looking at developing a technical steering committee. We have a number of staff throughout the county that are responsible for looking after the buildings, and so bringing them together a couple of times a year, doing some training on the software, giving them that building information, and of course just getting ideas in that group that they can generate some ideas as to how we might make energy efficiency in our foremost thoughts when we're looking at doing any planning for the buildings. We want to continue in investing in energy-saving capital projects, and certainly when we are looking at our life spans and our 10-year capital projects, looking at grouping maybe some of those projects together that we know where we might need to improve some lighting, water heaters, that sort of thing, making sure we're always looking at the energy efficiency. Working with any of incentive programs. One of the programs that we wanted to do is we wanted to have all of our LED, all the lighting in any of our Grey County-owned buildings switched over to LED within a 10-year time frame. Hopefully it won't take us that long. There are still some Hydro One and Union Gas programs out there that do provide some incentives, but certainly looking at when we looked at our data, we recognized that the LED lighting really does provide savings. So if we can look at making that a priority, then that will certainly help with our overall usage. And the other thing, again, was that behavioral aspect when it comes to staff, just making sure that there is information out to staff as to how to conserve energy, and maybe some staff-led initiatives to looking at different ways in which we can save. And that's it.
Thank you. You talked about this technical steering committee. Does that committee already exist?
It does not. So we don't, buildings, this would be our technical staff for housing that look after all of our capital projects, the museum, long-term care, so sort of all of them getting together and making sure that we're all on the same page when we're using energy.
Other questions? Councilor Milne?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you for your report, Anne Marie. This primarily deals with housing. Is the conservation program, will it span all departments in the county eventually, or?
It is all departments.
It is?
Yep, it is. We take information on all of the buildings. In Appendix 1, all the buildings are listed that are there.
What does it expand to, or extend to vehicles, machinery, all that kind of thing as
Right.
well, or?
So right now it's just building that it looks at, the buildings, but certainly could. It's certainly something that we might have to look at in the future for sure. Like if you're thinking about electrical charging stations, is that kind of where you're thinking?
Well, I'm thinking opportunities, Mr. Warden, vehicles, for instance. Maybe we don't have to have all of our staff driving four-wheel drive full-size pickups. You know, you could downsize, or hybrids, or whatever. Recently, the township of Southgate, we have a hybrid vehicle we got last year for, I don't know, some kind of a program deal. And I'd never driven one before, but my CAO, Dave Miller, and I drove it to FCM last week, and I was quite impressed. We spent less than $100 at fuel all the way to Quebec City and back. It was pretty cool, notwithstanding the extra freight that we had going one way. But nonetheless, it was an eye-opening experience for me to drive a vehicle like that. So I think there's huge opportunities there as well.
Oh, boy. Always take advantage of those opportunities to take a little dig, eh? Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councilor Soever?
Yes, on these appendices, it says estimated gas savings. Is that per year, or is that?
That would have been over the 5-year period.
Okay,
because we
so
looked
that's
at-
on Appendix B. And then Appendix C, oh, no, I think it's E, the new projects, it has estimated gas savings as well.
And that would be over the 5 years also. And again, that's looking at a comparison, and that's why we want to get some software in so that we can get a better idea of what we're doing. What we're doing right now is a rudimentary benchmark comparison. So we're looking at what the average, so what was the cost of over the 12 months in 2014 compared to 2018. So that's why we want to get a little better way of doing that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it'd be good to see what the return on investment is on some of these things, because I'm looking at just the first one that jumped to mind. It's costing us $30,000, and we're saving 46 cubic meters of gas. And I don't have natural gas, but I understand it's just under 20 cents a cubic meter. So 20 cents times 46, that's not a lot of return for 30,000.
It's not, but a lot of these projects too are also at their end of their lifespan. So that
Okay.
air makeup system that you're looking at is also 30 years old. So that's kind of where it's kind of a mix, but so we want to just make sure that when we are replacing it, we're replacing it with something that's energy efficient, a
Okay.
model that's energy efficient. So these projects are not simply because of, it's kind of a twofold. We're looking at, they're at the end of their lifespan, plus there's that opportunity to save. But thank you, yes.
Okay, thank you for that, because that makes me feel a lot better.
All right, call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Anne Marie. Turning next to item 6H, and that's the 5-year plan for children's services. Ashley, Barb. Barb. Okay, can I get a mover, please? Councillors Hutchison and Councillors Robinson. Sorry, Barb?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Warden. County Council, good morning. In the room today, I have I have some folks who worked on this plan with me. So before I get into it, I want to acknowledge their hard work and dedication to the services we provide in children's services. So Barbara Arbuckle is the manager. I have 2 supervisors, Tara Cockrell and Ashley Barfoot, and I think Brad Noble, our planning data analysis coordinators here as well. So we've got some data in here, and so if I can't answer some of your questions as we go forward into this presentation, I have some folks that can help me. Okay. So we're here today to talk a little different story than we were about a month ago. So we had been given some in-year cuts to children's services, and fortunately those have been reversed. We've been given some reprieve for 2019. We are starting to hear some trickle through about what 2020 is going to look like, and it could be very similar to those cuts that we were supposed to have in year. And we'll be working at planning on how to manage that. The good news is we've got about 6 more months than what we had before, and so it's given us a chance to pause and really take a look at how we deliver services. We are working hard with our colleagues across the province. It's been difficult 6 to 8 weeks to understand how we would find the savings and then determine how we would roll those out, the changes, because changes mean cuts. So I'm happy to say, though, that we're here today to talk about a 5-year plan. The other piece that I should mention is that when we were writing this 5-year plan, we had no guidelines. We had no framework. We had no transfer payment agreements. And we mentioned that in the report. A week ago, on Friday, June the 7th, that information came to us. So we've had some new information since this report was written, and it's given us a bit more information and a bit more detail. We're still analyzing it, but I just want you to know that we are now we have in our hands the actual documents that we have to work with to learn how they will affect who gets what money, how we ensure that we provide those supports throughout the county. So we're looking, so today what we're looking at is we have to have a 5-year plan. We are required to have the multi-year service plan in place, and that will align with the government's philosophy, and we have to have it approved by council. We were anticipating to meet the guidelines, their expected due date, which was the end of June, and within those guidelines came a little line that said we no longer have to meet the due date. So we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here, but I'm glad to be here because I think what this does is this gives us a chance to share the information we have to date, and then we can work on another level with providing some further detail to it. So we, again, that I mentioned in here that the ministry due date was June 30th. It's no longer June 30th. There isn't a date at this point. We base the information in this report on collaboration and consultation. We have lots of stakeholders that we engaged with. And that feedback does form the basis of our 9 key priorities that we have in our Grey County Children's Services Plan. And those will help us guide our work over the next 5 years. And I'll be looking at those further as I work through the actual report. What we do know is that we needed to engage with people who use the services. We needed to engage with people who provide the services. We needed to work with the actual families who are experiencing frustration and lack of care, we needed to dig deep. And so we were looking at quality of care, the hours of operation and location of where these services are all across the county. And we were finding that there were some themes and some challenges, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that. The first one you've heard from us before is the quality staff. There just isn't enough quality staff out there. So what that's doing is that's impacting the number of kids that can actually go into those licensed spaces. You'll see a chart I'm going to talk about in a few minutes where there's actual capacity, but there isn't enough staff to take those kids. So it's quite a conundrum to be in. The administrative burden, we are looking forward to the comments and promises from our government to lighten some of this administrative burden. And I know our friends and colleagues in our finance department will be as well. It's very convoluted and very complex. So if we can alleviate that for us as a service system manager as well as the providers, I think it will improve efficiencies. And then there's certainly the funding uncertainty. What does this look like going forward, especially given some of the projections for the number of kids in our communities? And then, so you'll note that there certainly were things that we could do that would help to support as a service system manager, and that's access to funding and wage equity, cooperation and communication between operators and us as a service system manager, and retaining qualified staff, improving the wait list management. These were all, again, themes that were coming through and things that we want to work hard on. And so priorities do align with the information we've been provided from the province, and even with the new information, it's very similar to what we had expected to be provided. And so at this point, this is just a plan. It's a draft plan, and now that we have the funding guidelines and the transfer payment agreement, we can further develop this plan. Okay, so before I go into this, are there any questions about the report? All right.
Jacqueline will pull it up for you, but she'll
Okay,
have to
thank
look
you.
at- It's page 84.
I'm not going to go through the whole plan. I'm sure there's more information in here than what you'll be looking for, but I wanted to just highlight a few of the things that were important to us. I'll take you to page 4. And those are the 4 pillars. So the renewed policy framework for early years in childcare is really important for you to keep in reference to. This is the Ministry of Education, and they're telling us that we need to look at all of our issues through lenses of the 4 pillars. One is affordability, one is access, another is quality, and responsiveness. And so then we looked to that and developed some action items under 7 areas of action: increasing access to the early years in childcare programs and services, ensuring a more affordable early years in childcare system, establishing an early years workforce strategy. That's going to be key. Determining a provincial definition of quality in early years, developing an approach to promoting inclusion in the early years in childcare settings, and creating an outcomes and measurement strategy, as well as increasing public awareness of Ontario early years and childcare system. So we will be working on digging down into action items that we can move forward as a service system manager with the folks we work with in Grey County. I'll take you to page 5, the population projection, and I apologize for how small these are. But what you're going to see is an increase in the number of children that are here and that are coming to us. So it's a bit of a challenge and a conundrum for us because we're looking at having less dollars to work with more families. And so we really need to ensure that we are highlighting and following through. The next one I wanted to take you through to is page 6, and it's a map that shows where these are, where our locations are for our early on centers. And you can see just by the highlight that we do have early on centers spread throughout the county, and that we are trying to meet the needs of where the populations are. We recognize this is fluid. There are populations growing, and we are going to need to be responsive to that. And we are on a good path, but we know that there is definitely work to be happening going forward. Page 7, I just wanted to also highlight some specific priority population work that we've been working through. So with Indigenous programs and services, we are working closely with Mawikwadong Indigenous Friendship Center to increase their early on child and family services. Through their partnership, Mawikwadong has been able to double the weekly numbers of early on programs offered at their Owen Sound location, and they also then, once a week, take those services out to providers in the county, so that there's a distribution of those services. We also know that we've had some newcomers, and we needed to address that gap, and so we've worked. We've had a pilot project, and it was based on the need identified within the community for other newcomer programming, and out of that came the need for children 0 to 6 to come together. So that's taking place. The plans are in place. Language for provision of services, again, we have French language here in Grey County, and that's something that sometimes we don't address enough, and it's on our radar. And so the one other piece I wanted to point out here is that we have an active Grey Bruce Early Years Planning Committee. And we can't do this alone. The boards of ed can't do it alone. The child care sector can't do it alone, and neither can the CMSMs, the Consolidated Municipal Service Managers. So we have collaborated in the past, and in 2016, we developed an early learning planning committee. And this planning committee includes our neighbors in Bruce County, Grey County staff, the Blue Water District School Board, the Catholic District School Board, the Providence School Board, and the Ministry of Education partners, as well as the health unit. So you can see that there's some very high-level planning coming together so that we can ensure that the trends that we're seeing with children are met, and that we can then take them and work with our providers to ensure that we're getting in early. Early intervention, we all know, is the key. The piece on page 8 that I just would highlight is the special needs resourcing and services. And I'm only going to touch on this because we're coming back to you with some information about some work we're going to do this year on our special needs strategy. We have providers here in the county, and we haven't reviewed those processes in quite a while. Part of what we know we need to do is find efficiencies, learn whether there is any duplicity, and find out what we're missing. Who aren't we serving? What's that gap look like? So part of our work this coming summer and into fall will bring results to some of the questions I've just mentioned, and I look forward to bringing back a report on that. So fee subsidy information is contained within this document as well, just so that you can be aware that we are supporting a significant number of families with fee subsidy. And if you look at page 11, the reason for child care service for those families is that 76% of the families are accessing the fee subsidy. They are doing that because they're already working and they need child care services, but their income is not high enough. So again, we are supporting that economic development in our community by supporting the families to be able to be working. You can see that we also have a challenge with, I would take you to page 14, where our licensed childcare spaces have grown. We definitely are serving more kids, and we have more children in care. And that's indicative of the trend we're seeing now with the number of children that are in need of care. They are getting their care, and we have increased number in care. But our capacity is different than who we're utilizing, than what our number of utilization is. And that goes back to a challenge with the number of qualified staff members. We are constantly and routinely hearing, and it's not just here in Grey County, it's all across the province. The challenge is that there just isn't enough qualified staff. And it's very similar to the other end of the spectrum in long-term care. That also has a staffing shortage for qualified staff. And so we think it goes back to some of the other information that we're providing to you, which is a gap in the wage. We recognize that the same qualifications are required for staff members working within the boards of ed, and their wages are definitely higher than our ECEs. So it's a challenge for the province, it's a challenge for us, and it's most definitely a challenge for the providers at the front end. My understanding is there has been a recent exodus along the shoreline, people going to work for businesses that are starting up over there because they're actually paying higher than the child care centers. These are qualified staff that we are already struggling to fill positions with, and they're going, and of course they're going to take a job that pays higher. So we're advising the province. They're aware. We have a few budget lines where we are allocated funds to assist that wage, but it's still not where it needs to be. to position them well so that they'll stay within the role that they're passionate about. And I think that I'll leave the rest of this document for you. We heard lots of information from the people we spoke with. There are great details. This is just a highlight of what we found, and we will be looking forward to identifying the next steps, which include those priorities on page 24. And again, they go back to those same priorities that are within that renewed early years framework. Looking for efficiencies in admin, completing our special needs resource review, continuing to maintain and improve communication with the centers and with the providers, and working with the operators to explore unique options for flexibilities, working with community to ensure all services are welcoming and supportive to all families, so inclusiveness, working with community to ensure, investigating options both for the province and the college to find ways to retain those qualified staff, and maintaining agreements with all the centers to provide the subsidized care that's needed so much, exploring options to support keeping the fees within those families' range, and then advocating to the province on the importance of wage equity and funding stability. Any questions on this 5-year plan?
Barb, any questions? Then on the motion to receive, endorse, and forward, the plan to plan, I guess, right? Wasn't
Plan
it?
to plan.
Plan to plan. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Great,
I'm
thank
going
you.
to suggest that we just stand up. It's been another hour. It's a little stretch. Phone's going. All right, I guess I don't know if they're all here yet, but perhaps, Barb, we can deal with your other item at 6I, the employment services transformation.
Sure.
Looking for a mover. I missed Councillor O'Leary, and I felt badly last time around, so. Moved by Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you.
And seconded by Councillor Desai. I was looking at Councillor Klumpus because she's been, but I got Desai. I'll look for you next time. Okay, Barb.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. So this is a report for information, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the employment services transformation across the province. As part of an ongoing modernization of social assistance, the province, the ministry, intends to transform employment services to better meet the needs of Ontario job seekers, employers, and communities. So just a little bit of background before I move forward with the report. Downstairs in Ontario Works and in our offices that are spread throughout the county, we are working hard with our recipients to engage them with the labor market, to be employable. We tend to work with pre-employment programs, so life stabilization programs and whatnot, and then we refer folks to the Y. They are our provider who works more closely with the job searching, the training programs, the connections to the labor market. And so right now it is a bit of a dysfunctional world. We have part of it, the employment services piece has part of it, and the intent is to amalgamate those services to Employment Ontario. Okay, so it's going to take a number of years, but there is work ongoing at this point. And the announcement has been made. It's going to happen. So as part of that modernization, the transformation will involve integrating those employment supports. And that includes both Ontario Works and ODSP, that Ontario Disability Support Program that's downtown. And they're going to be moved and transferred within the Employment Ontario portfolio with the Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities. So Employment Ontario will have contracts with service system managers who will be responsible for achieving employment outcomes for clients. Service system managers can be municipal partners, not-for-profit, and for-profit organizations and agencies. So again, a very different world as to what we've seen in the past. A competitive process for selecting the initial service system managers is underway, and the province outlined recently in a document what those catchment areas are. And they look very much like what we saw when the health unit realignment occurred. And so within our communities, given that the counties of Bruce, Huron, Perth, and Gray have been aligned through the 4-County Labor Board. It really does match what's happening with some of the work that goes on here. And so we thought it was a natural discussion for us to take a look at what does that mean if we were to become a regional service system manager. So the new model for employment services will integrate social assistance employment with the existing EO, as I mentioned, and there are many communities in the province that have multiple competing partners. We don't have that here. We have one, and our neighbors in Bruce have one. Some folks in the other two municipalities I mentioned, they have more than one, but they work collaboratively. That's not exactly the case in some of the larger urban centers, so it is a rather dysfunctional system. We do see the benefit of where they're heading with this model. The idea is to reduce fragmentation and duplication between provincial employment systems, to improve client service, and to increase accountability and to achieve better outcomes for people seeking work and for the employers. Huge piece is the employer piece. So although this transformation is going to take several years, next steps will include the 3 prototypes. There is currently a competitive process that is happening with regard to 3 prototypes, an urban prototype, a rural prototype, and I believe a northern prototype as well. And so those 3 are set to launch in April of next year, and there will be some time for outcomes from that. But during this period of time, it's important for us to do some investigation, collaborate, dig deep, and find out what it is our communities are lacking. How do we think we could do this better? We already do service system management in childcare. We do service system management in housing. So we think we are positioned very well to be the service system manager for these employment services, just on a larger level as a region. The importance for us is that the clients will find and sustain good jobs, that they get the services that they need when they need them, and that it decreases their dependence on income assistance. That also employers find the right workers with the right skills, and that we ensure the system is sustainable and serves clients more efficiently. So right now, this is just a concept, and we were bringing it to you to make you aware that we're investigating. Any further information sharing, any further planning, when we get to a point where we have something to share, we'll be back with that. I just wanted to bring it to you today to put it on your scope. Okay?
Okay. Questions, Council? Councillor Soever.
Yes, I was looking at that, and it seems like a good idea to restructure. I wonder, in terms of service delivery models, it seems that, we always go back to the old county boundaries, and since this is employment, if you were to actually do a bubble map showing where the jobs are, like say, you draw, say 100 meters for every job, so say a 500 employee place would have a 50-meter radius around it, and you were actually to look at where are the jobs and how do they cluster, it might be completely different. For instance, Southgate might actually be absorbed in Orangeville. Town of Blue Mountains may be centered around Collingwood. Grey Highlands may be partly in Owen Sound, partly in Collingwood, partly in Orangeville area. So in terms of service delivery models, it seems like you're creating a huge Ontario Works, but may not reflect where the jobs are for the people that use the programs.
Thank you for that comment. That's very valid. That happens in children's services and in housing as well. And so we have agreements with our partners on the other side of that border that we can use services, and that we don't restrict people from where they have to get their service. That agreement needs to make common sense, right? And so we do have that in existence. This boundary I'm speaking to was identified by the province. They actually provided the map to say who should be where and how you will play in the sand, how you will make this work. So even if it's not us as a municipality, if it's a for-profit agency, they'd still have to work within that 4-county area. For us, it makes sense because it's rural, but we will be working with our employment labor partners, certainly that 4-county labor board and the Simcoe County Labor Board, because we absolutely know that those jobs are not just in the town that we know where the clients live. We have to look at how do we ensure that they have access, that the employers have access to the employees, and that we can train those people to be ready for those jobs.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Then I know it came from the province.
Yeah.
And I would just add, some of you might recall that Employment Ontario was subject to some pretty severe scrutiny from the Ontario auditor earlier this year. So I think part of what's driving this is some of the comments that the provincial auditor made and wanting to make sure that as we move forward, there is, you know, demonstrable value for money in the way that the services are provided. Barb and I have talked a lot about the fact that when this information comes back, we need to be very clear about what the business case is for the county's involvement. The province has stated very clearly their intent to bring the private sector into this process and introduce competition. They want an entity that can exist between the province and the client to be accountable for achieving some very specific targets. Given our relationships with some of these other service providers, that may or may not be the most comfortable or optimal place for the county to be. So we just need to look really carefully at all of the implications of this as we go forward.
Councillor Bartnicki?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. You reminded me of something that I think is very important for us to know and for the general public to know. You mentioned the partnerships that already exist to achieve efficiencies, and I think that is what the province is calling upon all of us to do. There are many efficiencies going on, and Councillor Patterson mentioned one this morning, but Barb, you have mentioned the work across several lines, and I think we have to start communicating that intentionally to the public and back to the province, that we are already trying to find and have found a number of ways to do the job quite well.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Keaveney?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Barb, for your presentation. I'm wondering, and it's probably too soon for this, but if you're hearing any whiff at all from the province about any training incentives for employers, because we know that through the Y Employment Services, a lot of those have been ceased at this point in time, and those are really important to the businesses, and I think that's the other side of the spectrum, is how do we get folks who need employment into the labor market, and by providing those incentives for the employers, that allows them the ability to provide a wage that perhaps can get those people on their feet.
Through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you for that, Councillor Keaveney. There has been a pause put on a lot of those incentives. I don't think they're gone. I think they were evaluating, as Kim mentioned, they had to look at whether or not what was working and what wasn't. And we're understanding that they really want targeted initiatives. They really want to take a look at populations that have supports in an area, not necessarily moving folks around. People want to stay where they feel comfortable. They need to stay where they have resources and family and where they went to school and all those things. So what can happen with that? Fort County Labor Board is doing a really good job of some targeted initiatives, but again, they had a couple ongoing ones, and they were to start one locally. It was about tourism, and then it was on pause, and then it was on again. So it was hard to respond that way and get clients ready and have everything, your ducks in a row to start with it. I will be hearing a presentation a week from Friday at a meeting in London on work that they're doing with Stratford Perth that did a really good job of taking a targeted population of Ontario Works and ODSP recipients, getting them ready for that manufacturing boom that happened in Stratford and the successes that they had, and that learned some of the things that were challenges and what they would do differently, so that we can have those same kind of initiatives in our communities and focused on what it is we need. I think the underlying issue is to figure out where the gaps are and then look at the population we do have. But those initiatives are not gone, they're just on pause. Okay.
Others? Then I will call the question on the motion to receive, direct collaboration, develop a proposal, and bring back something for council's consideration. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we'll head back to our delegation. I think our guests are here. our public speaking guests, I should say. So I'll call up Sydney Martin, Grace Ruttenberg. Are they here? And I believe, is Hugh Simpson here from Federation of Agriculture? Hello. Good day. I understand, are they going to actually be doing their speeches?
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe before you do your speeches, if you could just quickly introduce yourselves, say your age and your name and where you live and where you go to school.
Okay, so I'm Sydney Martin, and I'm 14 years old, and I go to Beavercrest Community School in Markdale, and I also live just outside of Markdale.
Very good. And our other guest? Come on forward, speak right into the mic.
I'm Grace. I'm from Holland Chatsworth. I live in Williamsford, and I'm 11.
Very good. So who's going to be starting? Is it you first, Sydney, or is it Grace going first? Very good. And maybe we can get an elevation. I feel for Grace being a short guy. Okay, so yes, I should say that these are the winners, right, of the speech competition from the Federation of Agriculture, public speaking competition. Sydney, you were the intermediate winner, and Grace was the junior winner. And so you're going to do your speech that won, right? And it's going to be on mental health and agriculture.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
Farmers work in acres, not hours. They work in extreme heat and freezing cold, wet and dry conditions. They work in daylight and in darkness. Their work is physical, demanding, sometimes rewarding, but the agricultural business can be emotionally draining. Welcome all guests. Mental illness continues to rise in our culture, but did you know that mental illness is a part of the agriculture world in every task of every day? The number of farmers leaving the agricultural business continues to rise. They leave heartbroken, often prompted by public decisions beyond their control. It can be a drastic government decision or the harsh remarks of social media misunderstanding. Every day, farmers work for a positive outcome. Fields are turned for new crops, baby animals are born, crops are harvested, machinery is fixed, animals are treated to be kept healthy, and many jobs in between, from dawn till dusk or even later. But what about the other side to each of those events? Fields are behind because spring was late and seed couldn't be planted on time. A new calf was lost at birth because of a tough labor or cold weather. The crops didn't grow properly because of a dry summer, and now it is too wet to get them off the field. It was too expensive to fix the machinery, so to make ends meet, the family had to sell some livestock, but the markets were down, so the income was less. Agriculture is considered a 24/7 high-stress situation with high rates of anxiety and depression. All these factors often go unnoticed in farmers because they often work alone. It is not uncommon to hear of a farm accident in our community, but the sad reality is that a number of those deaths are actually suicide. It is difficult to determine how many because they are often reported as farming or equipment accidents. The enablers are all over a farm. Tall silos, silage gas, and heavy equipment are everyday hazards that make a suicide all too possible. As important as it is to bring the awareness of mental health in agriculture forward, they can also often be misrepresented. Social media is full of advocates. They are people who strive to help the general public better understand the agricultural world. One person is Farmer Tim from Central Ontario. Daily, he will post struggles and triumphs on his farm. Unfortunately, some people fail to understand the country way of life and bully him for the negative effects farming has on the environment. One responder even called his dairy farm a waste of time. But Farmer Tim continues with positive posts because he believes, as I do, there's a value to try and educate others. Another advocate is Amy Matheson of Western Ontario. This mother of 3, a dairy farmer's wife, traveled the province promoting agriculture. She once said, "We are going to put agriculture on the map and show them how good we really are." When researching Amy, the last report about her started this way. Amy Elizabeth Matheson. It is with great regret that Amy's family announced her passing at her home on July 29, 2018. Amy died as the result of an apparent suicide on her family's farm. Beneath Amy's passion for a positive outlook on agriculture was a struggle that faces farmers of all types. Depression is not something you can physically see or mend. It is a mood and behavior often mislabeled, dismissed, or ignored in the farming community. Mental health is everywhere. In England and Australia, there is a farm version of the Kids Help Phone, and here at home we have branches of the Canadian Mental Health Association with lots of resources. It is my hope today that I could give you just a little more insight into the world of agriculture, so that when you sit down to enjoy your next meal, you'll not only think of the hard work, but the emotion that brought it to you. A wise farmer once said, "We deal with weather, we deal with disease. We deal with the fact that this is our job and we can't walk away from it, and that this is the life we live. Sometimes you can't get a timeout at the farm level. Everyone deserves a timeout for mental health." Thank you.
Done, Sydney. And we have elevation. Well done. There we go.
What comes in a small package? Has all the things you love about horses. Is pretty easy to manage. Is amazing to have around. I've got 2 words for you. Miniature horse. Everyone knows that miniature's better. There's mini cupcakes, mini chocolate bars, mini pizzas. The list goes on. But my all-time favorite miniature thing is, you guessed it, the miniature horse. And I hope by the end of my speech, it's your favorite too. First of all, I need to get something straight. A miniature horse is not a pony. Ponies are bred to be stocky, with a thicker neck, shorter legs, a plump belly, with fluffy manes, coats, and tails. Miniature horses are actually bred to look just like the tiny version of a full-grown horse, and they have longer necks than ponies with longer straight legs. They're regular-sized horses mini-me. Just how many? Well, most horses are measured in hands, where 1 hand equals 4 inches. Miniature horses are measured in fingers. No, not really. They're measured from the ground to the last hair at the base of their mane, but not to their withers like a regular horse. To be registered with the American Miniature Horse Association, minis can't be any taller than 34 inches. That's super small. I'm about 51 inches tall. 34 inches is only 8.5 hands high. Full-size horses range from 14.5 hands up to 18 hands, which is 72 inches or 6 feet tall. And their heads are even higher up. Most miniature horses are too small to ride, but there are so many amazing things you can do with them. You can teach them to drive, not a car. That's what it's called when a horse is trained to pull a cart in a harness. They are small but mighty and can pull up to 4 times their own weight. There are even high jumping competitions for minis. No kidding. They can learn tricks and are also used as guide animals and service animals. Their owners think they're the perfect helper because they live much longer than a service dog would. Miniature horses are also used as therapy animals because, let's face it, who wouldn't want to interact with a tiny, fluffy, hooved creature that looks like a stuffed toy? Some people even take minis to hospitals or retirement homes to visit sick and elderly people. I bet you're wondering the same thing I did. What about the poop? Especially in a hospital. Well, miniature horses can be trained to wait up to 6 hours and then do their business outside. And of course, minis have a lot less poop than a standard horse. Trust me on this one. Miniature horses need similar care as a regular-sized horse, but need much less of everything, including space. When they are born, they weigh around 15 pounds. An average 225 pounds as an adult. A regular-sized horse weighs over 1,000 pounds, which really hurts if your foot gets stepped on. Trust me on this one, too. Minis only eat a few pounds of hay a day, compared to 20 pounds needed by a full-sized horse, and they have to be kept on a strict diet so they don't get overweight or founder, which causes painful hoof problems. Miniature horses live up to a third longer than a full-sized horse, like up to 35 or 40 years. That means I could get a horse now, still be with me when I'm my mom's age. Wow. What other awesome present could last that long? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Let's get out of here and find our own miniature horse to love. Who's with me? Thank you.
Grace, that was very, very well done. I'm sure that if we Google cute, we'll find a picture of Grace Ruttenberg Evans, for sure. You know, it's interesting. Years ago, I heard about a study of humans' greatest fears. Number 1 was snakes. Number 2 was public speaking. And number 3 was death, which tells you that people would probably rather die than speak in public. Anyways, those were very, very good. If you could come back up, I wonder if any of the council members have any comments or questions for either of our guests. Councilor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Ward, and councilors, and I want to thank our guests here for speaking today. What a great job. I think we deserve another round of applause.
Yes.
I think it's very, very important to recognize that these young people and the effort and the research they put into creating their speeches. And I will say that Sydney spoke to our group, the Farm Safety group, a few weeks back, and it certainly was quite touching in the sense of the mental health, what goes on out there, and all the trials and tribulations that a farmer does go through. I'm sure there's lots of trials and tribulations with small horses too. And just a question to you, Grace, is do you have one that you pull a cart with? But you're going to get one, right? Okay.
Right answer. Very good. Any other questions or comments? I have a question. Would you mind if we took a picture? I saw one paparazzi floating around. I'm sure that there are others as well. Yes, sorry, and you've been invited to stay for lunch if you would like. Say yes. And I have to say, all of our guests today have been women. What's up with the guys? Councilor Mackey?
And, 3 of the guests today out of the 7 have come from the municipality of Chatsworth.
Oh, yes.
And I'd also like to mention that Grace's brothers have all been to county council and won their speaking
That's right.
divisions also. So it runs in the family out there in Williamsburg.
Something in the water, or maybe Blue Mountains, I don't know. Is there a measure for that? Yes. Okay. So, we can continue. We're on item 6J, strategic asset management policy. I'm looking for a mover, Councillor Klumpus. And I'm looking over here at Councillor Gamble. Yeah, got everybody in, I think, now. Amanda, you're on.
Or good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm here today to present to you our proposed strategic asset management policy and to explain what it is, what it entails, and why it's important. So Grey County does not currently have a policy relating to asset management. Per the new Ontario Regulation 588-17, Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure, all municipalities within Ontario must have a strategic asset management policy approved and in place by July 1st of 2019, as well as an asset management or a...
Can I interrupt you a bit? Could you maybe move a little closer? You need to speak right into that mic.
Okay, stay there. Yes, so by July 1st of 2019, this policy must be approved and publicly available. And then as well, every municipality must have an asset management or AM plan for core assets by July 1st of 2021, an AM plan for all other assets by July 1st of 2023, and must have proposed levels of service in place for the next 10 years by July 1st of 2024. This regulation became effective on January 1st of 2018, and so I'm sure you've already heard about the regulation and the required policy within your own municipalities, as that deadline is very quickly approaching. But as a quick refresher, asset management is essentially the practice of making sure you're doing the right thing to the right asset at the right time. The proposed draft strategic asset management policy for Grey County is hoped to be effective in guiding the progression of the practice of asset management here at the county. It's assumed that this policy will be regularly reviewed and updated going forward, both to maintain compliance with the Ontario regulation and to ensure that it's guiding asset management activities at the county in the most beneficial way possible for our residents. Additionally, an AM consultant is presently being procured by the county to help implement asset management best practices within the county, and this policy will be subject to the review by the successful applicant to guarantee that the policy is the best it can be for our county. I've drafted this policy with the help of our newly formed Asset Management Steering Committee, and the implementation, reviews, and updates of this policy will be managed by this committee, which consists of myself, of course, as Asset Management Coordinator, Trevor Ireton from Transportation Services as Asset Management Technologist, Joanna Alpajero and Mary Lou Spicer as the Deputy Treasurers, and Kevin Wepler as Director of Corporate Services. As outlined in the regulation, there are 12 required components. Any of the municipality's goals, policies, or plans that are supported by its asset management plan, how the AM plan is to be considered in the development of the municipality's budget, the municipality's approach to continuous improvement, the principles to be followed by the municipality in its AM planning, which must include the principles set out in Section 3 of the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, the municipality's commitment to consider climate change, that the municipality's AM planning is aligned with any of their financial plans, how the municipality's AM planning is aligned with Ontario's Land Use Planning Framework and the Planning Act, an explanation of the capitalization thresholds used to determine which assets are to be included in the municipality's AM plan, the municipality's commitment to coordinate planning for asset management with other municipalities, the persons responsible for the municipality's AM planning, an explanation of council's involvement in AM planning, and finally, the municipality's commitment to provide opportunities to residents and interested parties to provide input into their AM planning. It's believed by the members of our new AM Steering Committee that the proposed policy meets all of the above requirements as set by the Province of Ontario. There are some positive financial implications that are projected from having this policy, in that anticipated that the implementation of this policy and AM practices will lead to more transparent and justifiable budgeting for capital expenditures. It's also hoped that these practices will lead to more readily available data on both the capital and operating expenses associated with our tangible assets and infrastructure, which will over time form a valuable resource upon which strategic decisions can be based to reduce our overall costs. So who do we consult with in drafting this policy? Well, internally, of course, we had our AM steering committee and relevant members of the senior management team. And then externally, we had Public Sector Digest and their AM policy making webinars, as well as the Municipal Finance Officers Association of Ontario. And we used their policy toolkit, and we attended their policy workshop back in October. And we've reviewed the AM policies of various other municipalities in Ontario for reference. So moving into the policy itself, the overall policy statement is that the County of Grey endeavors to implement a complete asset management program to successfully provide Grey County residents with their desired levels of service at the minimum total cost. This will be completed through an iterative process seeking continuous improvement and will be completed in compliance with all applicable regulations. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that the tangible assets owned or managed by Grey County are managed in a manner that provides the optimal balance of maximizing the usage of these assets while minimizing the costs and the risk of usage of those assets. The policy shall guide the county to ensure that it remains compliant with the Ontario Regulation 58817. The scope of this policy, of course, is that it applies to all tangible assets owned and or managed by the county that are used to provide services to our community. So this includes, but is not limited to, land, roads, bridges, culverts, stormwater sewers, recreational trails, buildings, parking lots, machinery, equipment, vehicles, and technological assets. Moving into the body of the policy, we have some definitions.
I'm gonna stop you again.
Okay.
We're losing you again, so
That's weird.
just scream right into that microphone.
Try my best. So most importantly, the formal definition of asset management is the coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from assets. As required, this policy will be reviewed or revised by relevant key stakeholders at least once every 5 years to ensure it continues to be as beneficial and relevant as possible to the county. And it will be made publicly available on Grey County's website and provided to anyone who requests a copy. In order to be successfully followed, the policy requires the commitment of key stakeholders. So first and foremost, we have the responsibilities of council, and those include approving by resolution the AM plan and its updates every 5 years, supporting ongoing efforts to continuously improve and implement the AM plans and policy, and conducting annual reviews of AM plan implementation progress from reports provided by the AM Steering Committee on or before July 1st of every year. Our CAO will oversee that the county maintains compliance with the AM policy and the provincial regulation. And the Asset Management Coordinator, that's me, essentially performs the role of the executive lead of the county's AM planning. Our asset management cross-functional team, which is still in the early stages of being formed, contains at least one member from each asset owning department within the county. They will oversee AM planning activities that fall within their department and act in support of other departments. And the AM steering committee that I've already mentioned will consist mainly of staff members who specifically work in the practice of asset management and will be overseen primarily by the finance department as a neutral third party to asset owning departments that is highly skilled at budgeting and calculating costs. This policy is aligned with the county's current strategies in that the strategic management of the assets of the county's assets tie to all three of the county's strategic goals, being grow the Grey County economy, support healthy, connected communities, and deliver excellence in governance and service. Determining and maintaining appropriate levels of service through AM will allow the county's infrastructure to sustain the growth of the Grey County economy, support healthy and connected communities through well-kept road and paramedic service networks, and deliver excellence in service through measurable and managed levels of service. The county's vision regarding AM is to proactively manage its assets to best serve the county's objectives, including effectively delivering services, supporting sustainable and economic development, maintaining prudent financial planning and decision-making. AM planning approaches will align with documents such as the corporate strategic plan, the county official plan, the capital forecast, the emergency management plan, the transportation master plan, and the budget. The objectives of the policy are to provide a framework for implementing AM to enable a consistent and strategic approach at all levels of the organization, and to provide guidance to staff responsible for AM to ensure county assets are optimally utilized to provide appropriate services to the community. The ultimate goal of Grey County is to efficiently provide its various stakeholders with the municipal services they need within the bounds of regulatory requirements, financial constraints, the built environment, and the natural environment. To achieve this goal, it's necessary that the municipality understands the needs of current stakeholders, considers the needs of future generations, and incorporates these perspectives into AM plans. Accordingly, the county will provide opportunities for residents and other stakeholders served by the county to provide input on AM planning, and will coordinate AM planning with other infrastructure asset owning agencies such as the province of Ontario and neighboring and lower tier municipalities. This policy has 16 guiding principles, most of which relate to the principles set out in Section 3 of the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, as was required by OREG 58817, but also a few that the AM Steering Committee felt would be beneficial. So these include principles relating to the following concepts: forward-looking, budgeting and planning, prioritizing, economic development, transparency, consistency, environmentally conscious, health and safety, community focus, innovation, integration, collaborative, compliant, continual improvement, sustainable, and value-based affordable. Moving into the capitalization thresholds, the service rendered by an asset will be the determining factor of whether or not to include it in the AM plans. The assets which have roles in service delivery and require deliberate management by the county will be included in the AM plan. This qualitative approach is unlike the quantitative and dollar value-based methodology that was prescribed in the tangible capital asset accounting policy that you may recall me presenting to you a few months ago. However, it's expected that often both approaches will include the same asset types, and so it's expected there will be a great deal of overlap between those assets capitalized for financial reporting purposes and those assets subject to asset management practices. The County of Grey will integrate findings from the AM plans into its long-term financial planning and budgeting processes. The AM plan will be referenced by departmental staff in the preparation of their budget submission to help them A, identify all potential revenues and costs, including operating, maintenance, replacement, and decommission associated with the forthcoming infrastructure asset decisions, B, evaluate the validity and need of each significant new capital asset, including considering the impact on future operating costs, and incorporate new revenue tools and alternative funding strategies wherever possible. Asset management planning will be aligned with the County of Grey's official plan. The AM plans will reflect how the community is projected to change and the related asset impacts. And last but certainly not least, climate change will be considered as part of the county's risk management approach, embedded in local asset management planning methods. The county commits to the development of tailored actions that make the best use of its resources to mitigate and adapt to climate change. This approach will balance the potential cost of vulnerabilities to climate change impacts and other risks with the cost of reducing those weaknesses. Vulnerabilities of county assets that may be caused by climate change will be addressed throughout the lifecycle management process of these assets. This includes things like making sure our infrastructure can survive the increasingly frequent and severe storms that are now occurring. And of course, the county's contribution to climate change through greenhouse gas emissions will be mitigated wherever possible in accordance with its financial capacity, stakeholder support, and any local reduction targets. Overall, this policy is about making sure Grey County is utilizing asset management practices strategically to provide the optimal balance of maximizing the use of county assets while minimizing the associated costs and risks, all in order to provide Grey County residents with the services they need and they want. Asset management is a process and a journey, not a destination, and drafting this strategic policy is a great step in the right direction. On that final note, I will now take any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and you're not at all passionate about asset management, are you? I did have one question. The cross-functional team and the steering committee, again, they're not in existence yet?
So the steering committee is in existence. So that's myself and Trevor Ireton, who's in transportation services. He's like the engineering and technical side of things. And then we have the deputy treasurers and Kevin Wepler as our kind of oversight right now.
The cross-functional?
So far, I have reached out to members of each department just with an email, but we're also currently procuring a consultant to kind of provide us with best practices. So we're hoping that they can kind of lead us in forming that committee and make sure that we have the right people on the team. And the purpose of that is to make sure that we're not missing any assets in any departments.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you very much. It's great to see this work going on. This was one of the more shocking aspects of learning about municipal governance, is that they don't have asset management plans. Because there's, you know, in the mining industry, you have a plan for everything. And so I'm very pleased to see we're moving forward this, and I thank you for all the work you're putting in. One of the questions that I have is, do you have enough resources? When this came up at the municipal level, one of the fundamental things, of course, is knowing what the condition of your assets is. So do we have condition assessments on all our major assets so that we can properly put that information into the plan? And if we don't, do you need additional resources to complete those in a timely manner?
Well, for the 2021 deadline, that's just core assets, so that includes roads, bridges, culverts over 3 meters, and stormwater sewers. And so for roads, we obviously have our internally done pavement condition indexes. We have those. And all bridges and culverts over 3 meters are already done by the OSIM inspections. So we have those as well. And then the stormwater sewers actually are currently being done by our transportation service. So we're in good shape for 2021. And then for the 2023 deadline, that's where we're hoping this consultant can help us a bit with best practices to make sure that we've got everything. But we do have building condition assessments already, and like our fleet is evaluated internally. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Thank you very much, Amanda. That's carried. All right, Jacqueline, you're up. Policy update. I'm looking for a mover to put the item on the floor. A move by Councillor Desai, seconded by Councillor Mackey. Jacqueline, you're on.
Thank you, Warden, County Council. It's unfortunate for Amanda and I to have to follow those two great presentations, and I'm hoping one of them will come up and read my presentation for me. No, I'm just kidding. So as you are aware, the Municipal Act requires all municipalities to have a notice policy and to maintain this policy with regards to provisions of notice to the public. This report is before you because our current notice policy is scheduled for review. So the purpose of the notice policy is to ensure that the county is accountable, transparent, and open. This is accomplished by providing notice to the public, and this enables the public to become aware of the business of the county. So in the report, I've highlighted the changes that I'm recommending to our current policy. The changes are largely administrative. For example, the previous policy was actually 2 documents, the policy and the procedure. So we're going through most now and eliminating the 2 documents and combining them into one. So that's just simplification for anyone trying to reference the documents. This policy also utilizes our new policy template, which you also saw with Amanda's asset management policy. The template is accessible format. It will ensure consistency across all our policies. And my personal favorite about the policy is that it has paragraph numbers, which makes it so much more simple when you're trying to reference things in policies.
Okay.
Some of the other changes include an addition of a legislation section and additions into the definition sections. So for example, I've added the definitions for CAO and clerk. These are simply taken from our procedural bylaw, so again, consistency across the policies, but ensuring thoroughness in this policy. I updated the clerk's job title, which was out of date. Courier was added as a form of notice under paragraph 3.2. And then finally, Schedule A had some small updates, which included adding the treasurer to be able to determine the appropriate form of notice for financial statements, for example, posting to the website, and email was added as provision of notice under the Planning Act. And then also in Schedule A, references to bylaws and policies were just updated to our current numbers. So those are the highlights of the changes made to the policy. I'm happy to take any questions or direct questions to the clerk.
Questions, anyone? I think that's fairly straightforward. Okay. Oh, Councilor McQueen.
Just briefly, these are the minimum. I mean, sometimes going through our official plan review, we went out further and we had workshops and stuff like that. So these are the minimums you're
Yes,
talking.
exactly.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. There we go. Yeah, our first report. Okay, are we going to go back then, I guess, to, I'm hoping that we'll be able to conclude before lunch. Sorry? Oh, we had questions, did we?
No, just on these two other reports.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm going back to item 5D.
D?
5D.
So we need to put it on the
Yes, we do need to put it on the floor. 2018 lease financing report, moved by Councillor Soever, seconded by Councillor McQueen.
I only have one question here. It's with the lease end dates shown under the paramedic services. They're all already passed. Now, I know it says option to renew lease for 5 years, rent to be negotiated. So, seeing as there is a net annual expense shown there, I presume those have been renegotiated and the lease end dates are actually later than shown in the document?
We do have a number of leases that are expired, and in some cases, we have been attempting to work with providers, and I'll make reference to Grey Bruce Health Services and South Bruce Grey. They expired in 2008, 2009. We've had no increases, and we've contacted them, but I guess we're not their biggest issue.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to.
Any other questions? Gonna call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Item 5E, the investment report. Kevin, I'll get somebody to move, please. Mover to put it on the floor. Councillor Keaveney, seconded by Councillor Desai. Kevin. Oh, sorry, Councillor Soever. You had a
Yes, in reading this report, I noticed that we are in the one investment program. We were pitched on that at the OSUM conference in Pembroke. And I noticed also at the bottom of page 3, it says, as of December 31st, the county's participation in the one investment programs has resulted in an annualized return of 1.08%. So I'm assuming that's since 2013. So that, to me, is not really a great rate of return, and I'm wondering, has consideration been given, particularly since we are in bond funds here, and bond funds generally don't do well in a rising interest rate environment, to doing something about that investment?
Kevin?
Yes, and that's in the report. Last year when I came to council, I stressed what we were seeing in the bond markets, and that was, instead of withdrawing them all at once, that was, direction was given, and we tried to draw them down like 20% a year, and just try to phase out that, and see how, as those years go, if the markets and that change, then maybe we change direction. But that was what was provided to council the prior, and that's what we would start doing, is drawing down that. So we did move 20% out of both those portfolios in 2018.
Through you, Mr. Warden. So would that be your recommendation today as well?
That's, I will have to go back and review it. Those bond markets have, this first quarter have done a lot better, than we've actually recovered some of our losses. So I'll have to speak to our investment experts and see what we're hearing and stuff. But even, you'll see some of the stuff I've been short-term with is my investor consultants have been saying they're anticipating further interest increases, and now they're kind of retreating on that again. So I don't know if that's partially why the bond market is coming back a bit. So we'll have to, I just have to keep on this and keep looking at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Going back to item number 7 now on our agenda. Councillor McQueen.
Warden, just briefly, as I mentioned about our mayor's breakfast, I understand maybe some haven't got circulated, so I'll recirculate that email out to county councillors and staff. What I do want to bring up briefly is I spoke with the chair of Roma, Alan Thompson, at our last AMO board meeting. And so we have the Roma conference coming up next February, but he did reach out to me to say, we do have the county caucus, as part of the county caucus chair, we don't really have a conference anymore. But is there something here that maybe at Grey County we wish that we would like to be on that conference? Because a couple of years back we did have a presentation that had some reflection of county business. So if you think there's an opportunity for somebody here at the County of Grey to be on that conference, he reached out to me to put something on there on county business, right? So just some time. We have a AMO board, or an AMO board meeting next week, our annual meeting, so next Thursday, Friday. So it's no rush, but if something comes up that you think that would be something that's maybe a highlight for Grey County, it's an opportunity to have that floor at the Roma conference, and I know a lot of us here do attend that. So anyway, just putting it out there. So if you think of something, let me know, and we can work toward that.
Good. Food for thought. Any other business?
At our next meeting, we will need to confirm the delegations that we want to request for the AMO meeting in August. As it stands right now, I know from the Long-Term Care Committee of Management, and you'll see those minutes the next time, that committee did want us to try and arrange a delegation with the Minister of Health to talk about long-term care, the application process, and the funding. But if there are other items that you'd like the county to delegate on, I just encourage you to put some thought to that, and we will have that discussion as an agenda item at our next meeting.
Good. Any other business? Councillor Soever, item number 8, I believe you have a notice of motion.
Yes. Where's the Town of Blue Mountains Council on April 24th unanimously passed a resolution that the Town of Blue Mountains requests that Grey County remove the MPAC charges from general taxation and invoice each lower tier municipality individually for MPAC services using the same cost recovery formula used by MPAC. And whereas the municipal MPAC prepares an individual assessment roll for each lower tier municipality, and whereas MPAC bills Grey County for its services using the legislative cost recovery formula under the MPAC Act, and whereas by including the MPAC annual payment of services in the general rating bylaw, the Blue Mountains share of this service is $484,732, and whereas the Town of Blue Mountains' actual share using the MPAC formula is $361,105. And whereas sections 311,4 and 326 of the Municipal Act allow for special levies, and whereas the MPAC services are being provided or undertaken almost entirely directly to the lower tier municipalities, and this results in the services being provided or undertaken at different levels or in a different manner in different parts of the municipality, we're asking that it be resolved that the County of Grey recover the cost of MPAC services as a special service under paragraph 326(2)(b) of the Municipal Act, and the lower tier municipalities be billed in that manner, with each lower tier municipality being billed the actual amount they would have been billed if MPAC billed them directly under the legislated formula.
Okay, so we're taking notice of a motion coming forward. In the future, we don't need to have the actual motion because you're just giving notice that you intend to bring a motion, but it's, nevertheless, it's here. It may look like this, or it may be altered as well once you consult with staff. Are there any other notices of motion? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Not a notice of motion, but I was unaware that Councillor McQueen had changed his first name to Paragraph on the top of the page there.
A working document, yes. Okay, I'm assuming there's no other notices of motion. Councillor Milne.
Would you like a motion to adjourn, Mr. Warden?
I sure would, seconded by Councillor Burley. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much.